this week we have some really good verses, but before we really hop into those, we're going to read the first 3 verses of section 10, because there's a really good lesson here that we learned before we even get into this whole warning that God sends Joseph Smith. So, verse 1 says, "Now behold, I say unto you that because you delivered up those writings which you had power given unto you to translate by the means of the Urim and Thummim into the hands of a wicked man, you have lost them." So it's talking about, I forget what it's called. It was the 117 translated pages that he gave Martin Harris, and Martin Harris lost them. So he's saying, okay, so you lost them. And then he goes on to say, and you also lost your gift at the same time. He's talking about Joseph Smith's gift to translate. So he's saying, at the same time that happened, you also lost your gift to translate. So not only did he lose this really important thing, he was probably really beating himself up. And I'm sure Joseph felt really guilty, especially because, God chastised, I guess that's the right word, chastised him, and was like, dude, like, you feared men more than you feared me. Like, what's up with that? And so I'm sure Joseph was feeling really guilty. And then at that same time, God said, you're not going to be able to translate right now. And it wasn't really so much of like, well, you gave those 170 pages away, you don't get to translate anymore. Like, that's not what God did. God just said, hey, like, for protection and for not just even your protection, but like your ability to still translate, you have to wait. There's just something that he knew was going on. Like, there was a bigger picture that he saw. And so he said to wait. But then he says that because of those 2 things, I'm sure Joseph was really beating himself up. And so it says, your mind became darkened. So these 2 things happened, and he's in this really dark place. And that's pretty scary. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I know I can. Like, even just a few months ago, I was in a really dark place where I was just always beating myself up, and I didn't feel like I could do anything right, and I was just screwing up everything. And there were nights that I spent, like, just in tears. Like, there was one time where I literally laid on my, like, back on my bedroom floor and just cried. And sometimes it was in the shower, on the bed. Like, I cried everywhere over everything because I just felt like I wasn't doing anything right. And so I can really relate a lot to Joseph Smith in the situation of he's feeling all of this guilt and all these things, and he gets into this really dark place. And when you're in that place, you feel like there's no return. You feel like you're just stuck there forever. But then we read verse 3, and he says, "Nevertheless, it is now restored unto you again. Therefore, see that you are faithful and continue on unto the finishing of the remainder of the work of translation as you have begun." And so even though in our lives we don't have like the gift of translation taken away and given back, but we can relate this to our lives and how sometimes we're in those dark places, and we maybe get responsibilities or just gifts taken away from us because of decisions we've made, mistakes we've made. But that doesn't last forever. There will always come a time when you'll be forgiven and God will give you back what was lost, and there will be light. And actually, I had to give a talk this past Sunday about the youth broadcast that President London, President Freeman made for the youth. And one of the things that I mentioned in my talk was there's this thing that they mentioned in the broadcast, and as they were having you watch this song, they wanted you to consider a time that you received a heavenly ray of light. And in my talk, I was pointing out that the way that they phrase this in this broadcast isn't when was a time when you had this like big like beam of light, like this big boom of light. Like it was just a ray. And if you've seen the video of Joseph Smith in the first vision, you know that when he was in that darkness and he was being overcome by Satan, it wasn't like God just appeared and there was this big boom of light. It was ray by ray, and just the light slowly came back. And so in our life, it's the same way. It's not going to be this big boom of light, but you're not going to be stuck forever, and those rays of light will come back. And so today, before we just kind of dive into Doctrine and Covenants and into this section this week, I just want to talk about that. I just talk about how sometimes our minds are darkened, sometimes our lives are darkened, but it doesn't stay that way. So have faith and have hope, and just have a good day. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.